Trump now took over the DC police, which
Yeah.
is also interesting. That now his idea supposedly is because he claimed that because the DC crimes has been out of control, which is not true. The DC crimes has been a 30-year low. But I guess everybody's saying that his main purpose is to remove all the homeless people out of DC. What's interesting is this, that the federal government actually has the right to take over the DC police. So
Yeah.
he acted within his rights. But the question is what's next? So he actually is talking about New York, Chicago, all these cities that have the homeless problems.
Yeah.
But notice also New York, Chicago, maybe Los Angeles and San Francisco, these are all blue state cities.
Yeah.
So what exactly is doing here in
Well,
your
I'm going to make a guess here that what he's basically doing is creating a sort of centralized police system, or wants to,
Mhm.
because he wants to break the political power of the state of the governments that run these cities. And I think a lot of this goes back to the elections. I think that Trump believes that these state governments rather these city governments in all of these places in Atlanta, in New York, wherever, basically manipulate the elections, manipulated the 2020 elections,
Mhm.
enabling him to lose, causing him to lose. So he
Mhm.
basically, I think this is a lot of this is revenge for that, if you like, and an attempt to establish direct control in these places, so that he can make sure that that this never happens again, and that in future the elections in these places produce the correct result, which is the one that he wants. I think this is what this is about. This is my own guess anyway.
Do you
His
think it's only
particular reasons, by the way,
uh,
not to like DC, because
yes.
of course DC was also the place where the January 9th protests
Mhm. Mhm.
happened. He remembers all of that. He feels very angry about the way in which that was policed and all of that. And also, there's been many trials and proceedings that have taken place there, um, in which people that he's wanted to prosecute have been acquitted, and friends of his have been convicted, and the same thing has happened in New York.
Yeah.
And of course, this is all about that. I think with Trump, it's always ultimately about control and about breaking the control of people that he sees as hostile to himself.
Do you think he's pushing the limit? I mean, I feel
Yes.
like I mean, the tariffs, there's a lot of questions of legality of the whole tariff thing, right? And then this
Yeah.
exported tariff is simply is unconstitutional. And now
Yeah.
he's taking over the DC police, which for now he can do that and that's illegal. But
Yeah.
if he goes to the next step, New York, Chicago, I mean, I don't know. That seems he is really pushing it, right?
He is absolutely pushing it. I mean, he's pushing it beyond legality, as far as I'm concerned, but beyond constitutional legality, anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I mean, that one thing we said many times, that Trump is
Yeah,
always interesting, right? He's challenging just
yeah,
about any
yes,
norm that we used to.
absolutely,
So, yeah.
absolutely.
Uh-huh. There is a case talking about the Supreme. I myself is fascinated by the U.S. Court system.
Yeah,
Now, some of the U.S. court system comes from Britain. Is that
yeah,
right?
absolutely true, absolutely correct. In fact, it's been described to me, it's been explained to me by a U.S. attorney that um, the courts in the United States, most of them have origins um, from the time when many of the states were still British colonies. Then the U.S. Constitution was enacted, and it enabled, it created the Supreme Court of the United States, which is the only fully authentic court that the United States created. But the rest of the judicial system um, in the United States derives ultimately from the British court system. And this is why it so closely follows the British common law, the English common law. It's
Now,
interesting.
now in the English common law, is that also like you have like landmark cases as a model? Okay. And
Let,
then what?
let, Let me explain it because I think
Okay.
this might interest your Chinese viewers as
Uh-huh.
well because it's very, very interesting. So in England, all law is supposed to originate with the king. The
Okay.
king is the supreme source of all law.
I
But
see.
the king is bound
Mhm.
by the law that he has created and which other kings have created before him. So the English legal theory is that the common law of England is the law that existed when King Richard the First was crowned in 1197. And what the courts do, and the courts are in fact the king sitting on his throne
Mhm.
with his royal coat of arms behind him. So that's why when we go into a courtroom in England, we bow. And that's
Mhm.
why it's called the court, by the way, because
Okay.
it's the court of the king. You see, where
Okay.
the king lives is a court. So what the judge is doing, he is actually there on behalf of the king, acting as the king, and he doesn't make law. He tells us what the law is, the law that has existed unchanged since 1197.
Okay.
And what the court says is the law is therefore binding on everybody, including including other judges in other courts, because they are repeating, in effect, what the king decided in 1197, what the courts decided after that, and what and they're all bound by that precedent because the law itself is unchanging. It can be changed, but it can only be changed by act of parliament. So the king calls his council together,
Mhm.
the Parliament and the House of Lords, and they sit together and they pass the law, and the king signs it, and then it becomes law, and that's the only way that law can be modified in England. But it needs again the consent of the king. All English legal acts begin with the words, by the King's most excellent majesty, as debated and discussed by the Commons and the Lords here assembled. We do decree as follows. It's that sort of stuff. So that is the common law of England, the unchanged perfect law established in 1197, which exists to this day. So that's also the law that binds the courts of the United States.
Well, to me, after observing the court in so many
Mm.
cases, what I find is that it seems like the law, or either the constitution or the laws, the text is part of it, but the very big part is the
Yeah,
implementation, the
yeah, yeah,
interpretation of
yes,
it.
yes.
And that's where the Supreme Court comes in, because that's where the Supreme Court said, this is how we interpret it. Is
Indeed,
that
correct.
how?
That is correct. Can I, by the way, just to deal with the question of precedents. Precedents are the previous decisions of the courts which tell us what the law is. So
Okay.
that's why we go to the precedents,
Uh-huh.
because it's from the precedents, from the statements of the courts acting on behalf of the king, that we know what the law is.
Yes.
Now, in the United States, grafted on top of the system that I've just described,
Mm-hmm.
there is the Constitution. The Constitution has created the Supreme Court of the United States. The Supreme Court of the United States reinterprets everything
Mm-hmm.
so that it must abide, supposedly, with what the Constitution says. And it says this is therefore how the laws must be implemented. They are they are understood through the prism of the Constitution, because the Constitution, especially the Bill of Rights, contains within it lots of provisions that refer to enforcement of laws, due process, the right of free speech, the right to fair trial, all of those things, that all originates from the Constitution of the United States as interpreted by the Supreme Court. So you're quite right. It's the
Mm.
Supreme Court that provides the interpretation and sets out the mechanisms of enforcement.
Okay. Which I guess makes sense when you have, if you are not clear how to
Yeah,
interpret something, you look at the precedents, right? So, okay,
that's
this
right.
is how the previous
Exactly.
cases has been determined.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
so, but of course, the president can be overthrown. You can, like a Roe v. Wade have been overturned,
Oh,
right?
yes. Yes.
So,
Yes. Well, the Supreme Court has the enormous privilege because it interprets the Constitution.
mhm,
It can decide when it's decided cases wrongly and can
mhm,
simply change them, which is a very difficult concept
yeah.
for English courts to understand.
Mhm. Okay. So now there's an interesting case about gay marriage. I don't know if you paid attention.
Yeah.
So
No.
this woman, Kim Davis, she is a clerk in one of the Kentucky county, and she refused to grant a marriage license for a gay couple. And she got fined. They kind of punished her for not doing
Yeah.
her duty, I guess. And she's the one who's suing the
Yeah.
whole, I think, the county. And what she basically saying is that Supreme Court had a case called Obergefell versus Hodges. So that's the
Right.
landmark case for the same-sex marriage. And she's basically saying this case is wrong. It need to
Oh,
be,
right.
yeah, overturned. So it's a serious case. So
Yeah.
and it's now going all the way to the Supreme Court, of course. What's interesting though, and that reminds a lot of people about Roe v. Wade, because we
Yeah.
thought Roe v. Wade, I thought Roe v. Wade is done, is settled case, but no, they
Yes.
could overturn it.
Yeah.
And the same thing with same-sex marriage. Apparently, I also thought it was a done deal.
Yeah.
But
No.
now lots of the people saying that it's a very little chance this got overturned.
No.
Although nobody knows. Okay, we
No.
today's word is never know. What is interesting to me is that this poses a interesting dilemma for Trump
Yeah.
because you see, just look at the people around him. Scott Bessent is a gay. Peter Thiel is a gay, and there is a lot of gay, powerful
Yeah.
people. Tim Cook, right?
Yeah.
Uh, Sam Altman. So there's a lot of. So I guess he should be in that camp. At the same time, this Kim Davis, they are religious group supporting
Yeah.
her. And those
Yeah.
are the evangelicals. That's a
Yeah.
powerful base for Trump.
Yeah. Yes.
He cannot afford to alienate them, isn't
Yes.
it?
Correct. You're absolutely right. Now, because this is a key thing difference. Just to go back to the Supreme Court, it's a key difference between the American and the British system. Because as we don't have, I mean, a court cannot say that an act of Parliament is wrong.
Mhm, mhm,
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible because I mean, it's the king, it's the court. The court is the king's court. It can't say that the king and parliament have made a mistake. I mean, that's absolutely out of the question. In the
mhm,
United States, it can because the Supreme Court interprets the Constitution and
uh-huh,
and the president and the Congress are bound by the Constitution as well. So they can cut round and
yeah,
reverse things in that kind of way. Now, but going to the politics of it, you're absolutely right. For Trump, this is a nightmare. If the court decides in one direction, he's going to upset all kinds of people. And if the court decides in the other direction, it's going to upset all sorts of important people. And I don't, I mean, I'm sure that Trump would much rather that this case had never been brought at all and would go away.
yeah. And that's why I think for Trump, it's very unusual. He didn't say a word about this. He's the one who
No,
likes to tweet about everything. He has an opinion
absolutely.
about everything.
Yes,
So,
right.
yeah. The Middle East, Al Jazeera lost all its journalists, like a five, six, seven people. It's pretty clear they were intentionally targeted.
Yeah,
So that's, I guess, the Israel is getting ready to go in and clean Gaza.
yes, yes,
That's
absolutely.
that's what it is.
Absolutely. I mean, I agree with you. I agree exactly with what you said about this journalist, and I agree exactly with what you've just said about what Israel is going to do in Gaza. It is the most horrible atrocity I've seen perpetrated in my lifetime. I mean, right, people talk about the Khmer Rouge, I suppose, Bangladesh, and all of that. I mean, I don't know about that, but I mean, in my within the Western orbit, this appalling thing is being done, and Western governments are standing by and letting it happen. And call me naive, I didn't think it was possible, but it's happening, and it's happening every single day. But that is exactly what the Israelis are going to do.
And what I'm saying is that this is pretty much the end of the so-called West value, because the
Yeah.
West is talking about freedom of press.
Yes.
That's a very
Yes.
important part of it. And
Yes.
also religious freedom. But
Yeah.
Israel has been bombing churches and mosques,
Yeah.
what have you. And the West didn't, they don't, what surprises me is that they don't even have like a mild criticism, like,
No.
okay, can you be careful next time? Don't bomb churches. They
No.
don't even say something like that.
No. No.
That's the end of the
Well,
Western so-called value to
Well,
me.
indeed, absolutely. I mean, even people in the West understand that. I read an article on a British magazine, centre left magazine called Unheard, which is absolutely mainstream. And the title of the article, which was a good article, by the way, was "Liberal Democracy Dies in Gaza." I
Mhm,
mean,
mhm.
I mean, the whole concept of it has died in liberal democracy died in Gaza.
It is.
It
Yeah,
has.
it's
Yeah,
pretty much dumb.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's done.
Yeah, and speaking of, mafia tactics, so the US government put a bounty on Maduro. Okay. Maduro is, again, Western value. He is democratically elected
Yeah,
using the
no,
Western standard, but
yeah,
they totally disrespect of that. Now they put
no,
a bounty on him. So another Western
yeah,
democracy value is gone. Okay. What's what's interesting is just I just want to amuse you is that Maduro's response is he put out 50 million reward for anybody lead to the released Epstein files.
yeah,
So to me, Trump seems like he has to pick somebody, like almost like
yeah,
take turns, right? Lula, Modi,
yeah,
Maduro.
yeah.
Who is next?
Well, who indeed is next? Who
Okay.
indeed is next? No, I mean, this isn't an attractive thing to say, what I'm going to say, but I mean, notice that he's been much more deferential to Putin.
Yeah, yeah.
And notice that Putin is a white
Uh-huh.
man.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to push this too
Uh-huh.
far,
Yeah,
and I
it
know
is.
that
It is.
some people will not would not like me saying that, but anyway,
But his whole approach about the chips war, I think is
yeah,
so
yeah,
obvious. Yeah.
yeah,
Now,
yeah,
I think his racism towards Chinese probably different from the other type of racism. It's not like okay, I'm the slave owner. You're the black slave.
yeah.
So you're not worthy. I think it's almost like with Chinese. It's almost like he's not happy. He cannot control China, so he dislikes these people because these people are not easy to control. I feel
Well,
that.
that's exactly right. I mean, that's exactly true.
Yeah.
He, of course, is not the only person in the United States who is
Mhm.
like this.
Yeah.
And to give you an example of what I mean, one of the Star Wars films, I've stopped watching them a long time ago, but not one of the original three, but the one of the sequel ones. They had characters, a big company that makes robots, drones or whatever it was,
Mhm.
and who were doing all kinds of evil things. And it's obvious that that the people were dressed and
Mhm. Yeah.
made to sound and look like Chinese. I
Mhm.
was so angry, by the way, that I walked out of the cinema at that point. I mean, there was already other things in that film that made me upset, but that was just it just
Mm.
went too far altogether.
Yeah. I think I know
And
what
that
you
was a
mean.
long time. That film was made a long time ago, when China was not as powerful as it
Yeah.
is today. Mm.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see who will Trump pick next person he hates next
And
week.
we'll also see what comes out of Alaska. It will be an
Yeah.
interesting summit meeting, and we'll discuss it then.
Mhm. All right.
Right.
Great. Have a great weekend. Thank you so
You
much.
too. You too. You
Bye.
too. Bye.